So these are the 10 key preverbal skills for language development. And if you don't mind letting me know where you're located at in the chat, that would be great. Just want to see where we have people joining us from. See Ohio, Georgia, Illinois, Florida, Missouri. Oh my gosh, everywhere. California, New Jersey. Wow, lots of Ohio. LA, New York, South Africa. Oh wow, okay, great. Pretty much everywhere. Minnesota, this is wonderful. I'm so happy that this reach was really, wow, Alabama, Texas, Pennsylvania. Okay, great. And then if you guys could let me know if you are a parent or a specialist, meaning like you're an SLP or, okay, lots of parents, lots of SLPs. Perfect. Okay, we're getting an overview. I saw BCBAs, SLPs, PT, OTs, SLP from Colorado. Awesome. Okay, perfect. Parent and SLP, me too. Okay, love that. So, and then last question for you guys, if you are an SLP, let me know what setting you currently work in. So are you ER? I see teachers, hospital, private practice. Okay, yes, university, retired. Shout out to the retired SLPs taking this. Early intervention, this is perfect. Okay. School pre-K, grade 0 to 3, outpatient, lots of different settings here. Good. Okay, I hope that this is super helpful for everyone. All uppercase preschool and clinic outpatient. Okay, great. So this is why you're here. So solid foundations. This workshop aims to establish a strong foundation for your child or your client's success by emphasizing those essential prelinguistic skills and imitation abilities that are crucial for fostering language development. So let's get into it. Just a little bit about me. I'm a pediatric speech language pathologist. I'm also an educational consultant and digital content creator. I have a decade of treatment experience specializing in early intervention, candidate for board certified specialist in childhood language disorders. I'm also a DIR floor time specialist, and I serve as a childhood expert and content creator for Love Every, the developmental toy company. So if you see a lot of the videos, those are located on the app, the ones that I'm going to be showing you today. And then, yeah, just a little bit about me personally. I am also a parent to two. I have a 13-year-old and a 7-month-old. So we are in teenage land and also kind of that newborn range. So super fun over here. My husband is a teacher, so very involved in the community here. And then I also have the pleasure of hosting parents and SLPs really worldwide on a lot of different platforms. My main platform is YouTube, also have like Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all those things. So about 150 of us together. And I give out a lot of free information during any of my free time. Okay, so your workshop guide. In this workshop, these are the things you're going to be able to do. Identify the 10 preverbal skills that are necessary prior to learning to talk. Identifying methods to implement age-appropriate evidence-based strategies to support speech and language development. And identify strategies to create child-led and engaging family-centered therapy sessions that align with targeted skill sets for each individual child. So again, if you could just let me know yes or no if you had knowledge about the 10 preverbal skills prior to taking this webinar. You could just pop it in the chat. Okay, great. I'm seeing a lot of yes, a couple of no's, which is great. And then just as a little bit of more housekeeping, we are going to be using neurodiversity affirming terminology during this webinar. So if you're an old-time SLP with over 10 years, you were likely taught person first terminology, but remember that the autistic community and the neurodiverse populations really would rather us use identity first as it's part of the identity. So you guys are so nice. So I'll be using the term autistic when referring to autistic toddlers or neurodiverse populations. So these will be what we're going to go over. I like to keep things moving. I do talk quickly, so I'm going to try to slow down. So we have an intro, preverbal skills, the imitation hierarchy, milestones and averages. We're going to talk about ASD and a little bit of GLP if you're an SLP, and then go through a Q&A at the end. Okay, so let's set it up. We have setting the foundation for language development. Let's get into it. These are the pre-verbal skills. And if you have access to the handout that was sent out with the overview of the presentation, at the bottom of the handout, you will see links to the so after the presentation, if you want to view this information at any time, it is available to you. And also, there is a code for you for Love Every if you would like to use that. And all the links on here are clickable. So if you would like to download this, if you're on the presentation, you can click and it will take you to download. So number one, with the 10 pre-linguistic skills for language development, reacting to environmental stimuli. Some examples of these are really that startle reflex, so startling at loud sounds, coffee grinder, a dog barking, a door slamming, responding to different sights. So bright lights, whenever bright lights come on, we'd really be looking for some sort of reaction, reacting to touch when mommy is touching baby. And then around 8 weeks, we start to see those smells. So there's really not a whole lot going on here other than just reacting to environmental stimuli. This is one of the characteristics that we see sometimes that start to show in sensory differences for autistic individuals in that they react differently to environmental stimuli. So we're going to go over those later. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. And then you will also see a lot of videos right here. This is my son, Will. So some of these videos are of him and they're examples that I'm going to go over. So responding to people, whenever we're talking about the pre-linguistic skills, we're talking about really pragmatic communication because that's the building block of communication. So those that they want to communicate with you, they want to get an idea across, they have thoughts and ideas, and then we move into receptive language understanding, and then after that, it's expressive, right? So responding to people here, we have a quick video. This is kind of number one and number two, reacting to environmental stimuli and responding to people. So you can see babies pursing lips, babies opening mouth, the eyes are widening. So you can see it. These are all not a verbal explanation that they understand that mom is there. But here, I'm going to show you an actual verbal one. So this is Will, and you're going to see a lot of wait time here.
Oh. Oh.
So you can see it did take a while, but with plenty of wait time provided between 2 and 3 months, we really like to see baby responding to people, especially those familiar people that we see. So again, with the raised eyebrows, pursed lips, and wide eyes. All right, while we're talking about whenever we're speaking to babies, it's very important that we use parentese. Can you guys let me know if you know of parentese? Oh, thanks, Stacy. Okay, yes, everyone's familiar with parentese. This is a new term. It used to be called baby talk, right, back in the day, but there is a difference. I love that everyone here is saying yes to parentese. Oh, okay, all right, good, a couple of no's. Great, here's the difference. Baby talk is using made-up words, so those are things like shoozy woozies, goo goo gaga, right? And they're using incorrect grammar, like does the baby need milky? And then modeling poor speech and articulation here, like, oh, my little baby. So again, those are sometimes ways that parents speak to babies, but I really see a lot of parentese going on, even if they don't know that they're using it. We see it worldwide in virtually every language, parentese is used. And so we're using elongated vowels, and that's really going to help a child learn speech and language skills. Vowels are the meat and potatoes of every word, right? If you're walking by a puppy and a child says, you might not know that they're saying puppy, but if they say uh-ee, then you would say, oh yes, that's a puppy. And that's why the vowels are really the most important part of everything. Okay, so we see using real words, elongated vowels, sing-song tone of voice, and natural pauses to encourage back and forth communication, as well as modeling correct grammar. So here's an example of parentese with Will.
Yes, we played. Oh. Did we read a book? Oh. Yes, we read a book. We read a book. Did we play? Yes, we played. We played.
So you don't always have to be singing a song, but you can tell just in his eyes and in his reaction that he is automatically drawn to whoever is speaking. It doesn't have to be me, whoever is using that parentheses. So that is a great way to start to view things. Okay, so number 3, we have turn taking in vocalizations. So the foundation of building blocks and language skills generally begins with cooing, and we can use pauses, verbal routines, songs, and motions to encourage verbal responses and turn taking. But the foundation is that you're saying something and then baby is responding to you. Okay, so in this video, you are going to see on the right, we usually see this skill developing between 3 and 4 months. But really, it can develop even later than that. But the main point is that they are recognizing someone is speaking to me and then I need to speak back to them. That is the basis of all forms of communication. So really that turn taking you'll see here from 3 to 4 months. And then this one, we're now in the screeching stage. And I'll quickly jump over the developmental milestones of speech whenever we get over to this video. So let's watch between 3 and 4 months. Yes, if you guys want the slides, they are located. There's a link in your handout at the bottom that says view presentation. So you'll have access to all of these to view again.
Happy and you know it, and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Stomp your feet. Say hooray. Yeah. Hooray. Said hooray. Good job. Happy.
Okay, so I hope that that gave you a pretty good example of really the earliest form of turn taking in vocalizations. He's not necessarily saying anything, but he is understanding, wait a second, mom said something, she's looking at me, maybe I should say something. And that is what we're trying to teach with those early pragmatic communication skills. Okay, so now let's jump over here. We're going to watch Will at 7 months. This was taken the other day. He is at the screeching phase, and that's one thing that I did want to mention. Whenever we are seeing speech and language development, we often see cooing between 2 and 4 months. Pretty much everyone is familiar with that. Then we can see some babies will move directly into babbling, but some babies will move directly into screeching and vice versa. So it really depends on the child and their overall strengths and abilities. So for example, William was more advanced speech and language skills and delayed gross motor skills. And we see that happen all the time in development, really because whenever you're looking at those milestones, babies can only focus on learning one thing at a time. So what happens is, like, let's say for Will, he was really focused on those early speech and language skills like turn taking, vocalizations, cooing, babbling, screeching, but he wasn't necessarily really focused on rolling over or sitting up. So we might see a delay or a shift sometimes in other gross or fine motor skills if a child is more advanced in another area. And that's why we allow 1 to 4 weeks, so up to a month of differentiation for a child to catch up in those skills, even from the milestone range. And I do have a slide on here about milestones versus averages, and that's towards the end. So we will get to the difference between a milestone and an average. But let's watch here about how his turn taking in vocalizations has evolved from 3 to 4 months to 7 months. So that was just a fun social game that we were playing. One of the best things that you can do for early childhood development for your client or your child is to copy them, because that gives them a visual and an auditory response to be able to hear and see what they're actually saying. So I was just copying him with his little like screeching his ass. And then Don't forget to drop your questions in the Q&A, but I will go ahead and answer this one. My son's opposite, more advanced and gross motor, taking time with speech and language. Is that normal? Yes, it is normal, but we definitely want to be aware of the milestones and averages. Okay, so developing longer attention span after your child is turn taking vocalizations, or after that child understands your client, right? That they are supposed to imitate or copy you or respond to you. We want to develop longer attention span. So how do we do this? I'm going to give you two examples. One is 5 to 6 months. This is a 5 or 6 month old. And then this is actually a 5-year-old of how we develop longer attention span. Something that I heard from a parent is that one of the therapists that they had was going to their home and sitting the child in the high chair and kind of keeping them trapped in there to quote unquote work on attention span. And this made me very sad, because that's not working on attention span, right? That's really just limiting the ability to move. So what we want to do is make sure that whenever we're working on developing attention span, it's in play, because we know that children learn up to 40 times faster skills whenever they're learned in play, as far as the synapses in the brain are learning and attaching and pairing meaning with this. So an unassisted attention span, meaning that you are not having to sit and attend. The rule of thumb is 2 to 3 times a child's age in minutes. And this is really important to keep in mind for therapy, right? That if you're working with a 2-year-old, they should really be only able to pay attention to something for 4 to 6 minutes. So you might want to have a ton of different activities available, because they might start rolling things faster. And especially if you have a child that needs help with developing longer attention span. I know, like Laura Mize a long time ago used to say, she used to call it stay and play. The reason why attention span is important is because if your child is so busy that they're not able to really process or be given the time to process all the information that is surrounding them, all of that language, they're never soaking up or receptively understanding the language. They're just moving on to different things. That's what we call, right? Like busy kiddos are busy kids. So what we have to do a lot of times is back up to develop longer attention span. Sometimes I do this really easily with like bubbles. Instead of opening your bubbles and just blowing the bubbles, I might say like, 1, 2, 3, blow bubbles. And then guess what? The next time I go to open my bubbles, I go, whoa, whoa, and I pretend to drop my bubbles, but everyone just attended to that. And that was an extra 5 seconds that we added on. And sometimes those 5 seconds add up, right? We do 5 seconds here, 5 seconds there at the beginning, at the end, we add one puzzle piece on. And then this is one of my favorite ways. I like to add movement. So this is a tunnel we're going to watch. I was working with a 5-year-old. This is ESY. At a preschool, and we are working on attention span and following directions. So let's see how this looks in an older child.
Go through the tunnel. We got our flower and put it in. Yay! Okay, go get another one. Let's go.
Okay, so we had our felt flowers, right? Our Love Every Felt flowers. Instead of just having all of the flowers right next to the stand, one of my favorite things to do is either take magnets and a magnetic board, which is AKA a baking pan. I never go anywhere without my baking pan. Or you could use puzzle pieces and a puzzle if a child likes puzzles. Grab your tunnel, or if you don't have a tunnel, maybe just move things into a different room if you're in a home setting, or across your environment if you're located in a school or private practice. And we go. We get one piece, we work on identification, like let's get our cow, or let's get something that says moo. We grab it and then we run back, or we crawl back through and we put it in. Now we have taken something like a puzzle that might take 1 minute, right, to complete, and we've made it last 5 to 6 minutes. So movement, anytime you can incorporate movement into your sessions, that's going to really ramp up our sensory systems anyways, and really get the child's true skills going. Yes, also great for regulation. Love that. Okay, developing joint attention is number 5. So after your child has the other 4 skills, we're ready to move on to joint attention now that they have a longer attention span. Remember that joint attention is going to present differently in neurodiverse populations, and I will give you examples of that at the end. the examples that you're going to see in these videos are going to be back and forth traditional joint attention skills with an adult or with a preferred parent. And this is basically having a shared experience, because that is the basis of the communication. You cannot communicate about something unless you're having a shared experience. So some great things to do are play social games, music, giddy up horsey, go to town, giddy up horsey, don't fall down. You could do a pause with the fill in the blank. But again, our main goal is to develop joint attention. I want you to look here. This is my friend Karina. She's playing with a 7-month-old. And we will see, I retracted the audio because I really just want you to focus on the joint attention, right? So he's looking up at her like, wow, like, who is this? What's she doing? He's looking back at the toy. Whoa, wait a second. She's saying something. She's still playing with the toy. I'm loving this. Now I really like the toy. Oh, but she said something and now I'm looking up to her. This to me this is clear as day. This is joint attention. With joint attention, one of the best things that you can do is, if a child is busy, you could put them in something like a laundry bin, right? Also, again, helping with regulation, moving them around in the laundry bin. That way they're paying attention to you for the longer time. I love joint attention in a swing, something that has movement. And anytime you can be at a lower level to where you're not having that huge difference between eyes, that's a great place to start. So here I'm on the floor with Will, we're reading a book, and instead of putting him in my lap to read the book, I'm just like laying on my belly in front of him. So let's watch here.
Big and big. Look how big it is. Wow. So little. Big shoes. Shoes. So big.
Okay, so you could see whenever I am laying like this with him reading the book, he can see my sign for shoes. He's looking back and forth between me and the book. We're having a really great join and shared experience, which is joint attention. So again, this is going to present differently in neurodiverse populations. We will go through that, but essentially, joint attention will likely not look like this unless you are incorporating movement. It will look something more like a child you might be playing Ring Around the Rosie, and we all fall, and then instead of looking up at you, maybe they sit down. So they are still listening, they're still attending, they're just not really looking directly at you, and that's totally fine. And we see that a lot, especially if a child feels uncomfortable with eye contact, or an adult, if you're working with adults. They don't necessarily need to be looking directly at you for therapy. That's not something that is a goal, right, of our pre-linguistic skills. It's just that they're having a shared experience. So however that child communicates with you, that they're joined in with you and that they're having that experience, that's going to be the way to go. Okay, someone's asking about the videos. You can view these videos. The ones from Love Every are on the Love Every app. If you click on the play thing that you saw in the video, you can view them there. And then you can also view them in the presentation if you use that presentation link from Canva. All right, number 6, following directions. So I hope everybody's staying with us. We are moving pretty quickly, but I think we're right on time. So we're following directions. Whenever a parent says to me, they know what I'm saying, they just don't do it, that to me is like, my ears go up, like I'm really listening to everything else that they're going to tell me, because that to me is something that is not typical. A child generally wants to listen and follow simple directions, especially whenever they're used in play. So something like high five, give mommy high five. Something like, wave goodbye to grandma. And again, these are gestures. So you'll have to take a look whenever we get to the gesture slide about what age those are appropriate for. Something like give and show me, those are as early as 9 months. So really give and show me, 9 months, they should be able to give me the ball. They shouldn't just throw it away from you. We want to start with play task if a child is doing this. So let's look at this. This baby, mommy's saying, give me a high five. And then the baby's giving her a high five. So if a child is not doing this for you, right? If you're saying, give me high five, or sometimes I say, you will see this later on my Instagram today. I'm putting up a post it's really about delayed echolalia. which is one of the stages of NLA for Justsalt language processors. But essentially, it's about following directions where I'll say, let's put pepper on our egg. Shake, shake, shake. Can you shake? And I want the child to shake. If they're not following those directions, they're not understanding. You'll hear him say in the video, let's put pepper on, but he isn't putting the pepper on. So whenever we're seeing that delayed echolalia, they're just imitating it back to us. They're not actually following direction. We want to, one, start with a play task, something that's easy to do, that's fun for them, that might be motivating, whatever intrinsically motivates them, or whatever is fun that you're doing during your session. You want to model it for them, and then you want to take very short turns. Even something like cleanup, right? If a child isn't cleaning up isn't fun. But what you can do is saying like, ooh, let's put these in, boom, your turn, in, boom. Watch Kelly, Kelly puts in, boom. I'm making my own little verbal routine. I'm making it fun. I'm modeling it for them, and I'm asking them to do something. So this is where most of the time I'm starting around this, either attention span, joint attention, or following directions. Whenever I am working with a client that is missing some of these pre-linguistic skills, this is almost always where I'm starting. Okay, purposeful vocalizations. These are vocalizations that are to someone about something. So funny story. Oh, all of these videos, I was 33 weeks pregnant in these videos. So very fun times. I remember specifically in this video that this little one that I was working with, this is actually something I would work with her on, is actually vocalizing to someone about something. So I'm going to explain it here in the video. Remember, if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A instead of in the chat.
Around this age, your baby is likely making lots of sounds and babbles, but they may not be directing those sounds or babbles to another person just yet. You can use the transparent tubes to help your baby practice making sounds intentionally. Make a silly sound or say a familiar word into one of the transparent tubes. Then hold the tube up to their mouth and encourage them to imitate you. Babies love hearing the feedback from different tubes based on size and volume, and this can motivate them to try to copy you.
I love that at the very end, you did finally see her look at me. I said ba 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 ba, and she said ba 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 ba. So these can include sounds just like you were hearing, like, or word approximations. But really, it could also include a gesture, a form of joint attention. You could use objects to encourage imitation. So these are things like the little Dollar Tree microphones. A lot of times, if a child isn't purposefully vocalizing something to me, I'll provide something that's almost like I call it like a buffer between us, so that maybe they don't know me, maybe we haven't developed that really great rapport yet, which is super important, or maybe they're just really not understanding. Talking into something will provide more direct feedback, some auditory feedback, and a lot of times you would be surprised that you can get a lot more purposeful vocalizations out of a child whenever they're talking into something like a microphone. I love the idea of puppets too. Great idea. Yes, anything that's going to say, like, take the pressure off of them directly from talking. Number 8, imitating actions. So copying or imitating a movement. I think that this is the video I was actually talking about earlier. So we'll watch this one first. This is an older child, 5 years old. And I'm really wanting him to shake, I believe. Let's watch this and see what happens. But essentially, we're getting into the imitating actions that are gross, fine, and then speech. We don't start with speech. So a child is not going to be imitating our words, our facial expressions, or our oral motor movements, because the muscles are so small. What they want to do, what we want to see, is a child imitating a gross motor skill. So let's watch this one first.
Hey, now I need pepper on my cookie. Shake, shake, shake. Can you put pepper on? Shake, shake, shake. Good job. Thank you.
Okay, so this was the one where he did. So we had practiced a lot on shaking. So all I was wanting him to do was shake, shake, shake to put pepper on, because that tells me, okay, he understands what I'm doing whenever I say shake and I shake my pepper. So again, imitating action is copying or imitating a movement that demonstrates a form of understanding. So let's watch this one. This is with another cutie pie.
Shake, shake, shake.
Imitation is a foundational skill for speech and language development. Your baby learns to talk by watching you speak and imitating your sounds.
Ready, set, shake, shake, shake.
This can be difficult for babies to do at first, since speaking requires tiny muscle movements and quick sequences. Learning that their body can do what your body does paves the way for language development. Facing your baby, shake the wooden sound cylinder while holding it next to your mouth. Say, shake, 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 with an excited tone.
Shake, shake, shake.
Then give the cylinder to your baby to try. Don't worry if there's a delay in imitation. Simply model it again. Shake, shake, shake.
Okay, so sometimes you'll see that a child like this little one was shaking his ball, but I don't think he knew he was shaking the ball. I was wanting him to shake our wooden sound cylinder. And so he didn't initially shake the wooden sound cylinder when I took away the ball and gave him the cylinder. However, I do love something that rattles. And that's why you see that, let's say like on the PLS, right? Like imitate shaking rattle. That's whenever you see that. So really we're looking at imitating actions, and this is going to be the bottom basis of our imitation hierarchy language skill chart that we're going to go over in a couple of slides. So this is super important because it is the foundation of verbal imitation. We have to understand that a child has to understand that they can do what your body can do. So we start gross motor, large muscle movements, shaking, if they can stand or run or jump. Then we move into fine motor, and that's whenever we start to see a lot of those signs like more, or even like ball, things that are more fine and smaller. And then we move into our speech articulators, which are oral motor movements. Okay, so imitating actions, number 8. Again, another big starter. If a child has all of the skills prior, bingo, this is where we start. Using gestures or signs. Okay, so this is disclaimer. The DHH community wants people to know, and obviously I'm sure everyone knows this, that signs are words. We cannot say gestures and signs. The reason is because gestures are symbolic representations of words, and signs are actual words. They're different. So signs are a language. Sign language is a language within itself. There is no such thing as baby sign, right? It's not a thing. It's sign language. Now we can accept sign approximations. Let's say like a child is small, right? They don't have those gross and fine motor skills that they need to be refined over time. Just like our word approximations, a child might say ba for ball, then they say ba, then they finally say ball. And a child might do this for more or this for more, and then eventually they do this, right? So they are shaping it up, but it's not, and that's what I think people are referring to whenever they call things baby sign. But let's make sure that we're being cognizant of what we are communicating, and that we're respectful of the deaf and hard of hearing community, that sign language is a language. Okay, so gestures, and here's the difference between gestures. Gestures are symbolic representations of many words and or phrases. So for example, if I go like this, which I do all the time in therapy, this could mean, I don't know. This could mean, oh, where'd it go? This could mean, who knows? This could mean, uh-oh, what happened? There are 5 different phrases or meanings that one gesture could represent. So that is the difference between signs and gestures. But gestures are such an important part of language development. We're going to go over it on the next slide, but let's watch these first. Okay, so let's go into signs. This is 11 months and up. This is Sloane. This is my niece.
One more time. One more time. Can you do more?
I love that she's doing it up here because why not? Excuse me. And then now we're going to learn more about signs and how we're going to pair them with our words. And you could do this during play, during bedtime, and again, just during any of your speech articulation or your language development sessions whenever you're doing child-led learning. So let's see.
Incorporate the book into your child's daily routines or into their playtime. Pairing signs with words during these activities will help your child understand the meaning of the sign or word.
More. Thank you. In. Ready? In.
At bedtime, hold up a few of your child's favorite books and model the sign for book as you hand one to them. Repeat this again and again until they have all of the books. Then encourage your child to hand you the books by using the sign and the word for book. Remember, any attempt at sign imitation should be celebrated. Signs are learned and used just like spoken words. They may not be perfect from the start. For example, when teaching the sign more, you may notice that your little one does a fist bump or claps their hands. That's okay. With more practice and fine motor control, they will eventually be able to use the sign correctly. At this stage, the goal is to encourage meaningful communication attempts.
More. Thank you. In. Right? In. More.
Okay, so I think we have an understanding about the difference between gestures and signs and also the importance of it. One way that I like to promote using signs at home is to hold some of the pieces of things. We're not withholding, it's different. Withholding is making a child do something or else they don't get something else. Holding it just involves you in part of their play. So like they have a couple pieces, I have a couple pieces, and especially being careful with the word more because we always want to have a child not overgeneralize a word. So let's say like they're doing books and they want all of their little mini books. We would say more book. And you would do the more sign tagged along with book. Really, more should always be tagged with another word. That way it's not overgeneralized into a ton of different meanings. We want like more eat, something like that, where they're getting one or two pieces at a time. We say more eat, and we give it right away. More eat. We give another little chip. And then instead of just giving a child a whole bag of chips, they got 30 trials of doing more eat, because I gave them one chip at a time every single time, not expecting them to imitate it back to me, but still offering that as a model. I found that children naturally want to communicate in a way that's going to get them what they want as fast as possible. So they're like, wait a second, I don't need to sit here and listen to this lady do this. I can do this. More eat, here, give it to me, right? And so that is really how we start to see that intrinsic motivation start to build. Okay, this is why gestures are important. The First Words Project, it's linked. It is linked in your presentation, and research shows us that young children that are using gestures between 9 and 16 months, we want to see 16 gestures by 16 months because this is the greatest indicator of language skills between 24 and 32 months. If a child is consistently using gestures, this tells us that they understand that words have meanings. And that is why this is so important. So some of the gestures that you're going to see here, I see we have a ton of hands up. Make sure to drop questions in the Q&A so I can have time to go over them in the end. Okay. So these are gestures that predict language skills. We want 16, and you might think, wow, I don't know 16, but shaking head, yes, no, reaching up, blowing kisses, waving hi and bye, those are different. Pointing, open hand point, and then pointing with finger, saying shh, right? Be quiet, high five. Blowing, stomping, and playing peekaboo. So things like social games, right? Motions to songs and those movements. That's what's important. So we all fall down if a child is falling down. Every time, even whenever a baby's reaching up like this, right? Will knows whenever I go like this that he wants to go up. So I'm pairing it with our sign and our word for up. And then hopefully in the next 2 months, he'll start to reach up and do this with his hands to tell me I want up. So make sure to check out the First Words Project that's linked in your handout. Okay, number 10, this is going to wrap up our communication pre-linguistic skills, or those pre-verbal skills. So you can see here, the baby clearly wants mom's attention, right? He wants to say something. I don't know what he wants, but we start to see this between 10 and 12 months. This is where communication might look different for autistic toddlers or for autistic babies, right? Or for neurodiverse populations that don't have a diagnosis yet. What we want to try to do is to help them learn a way to communicate their idea and their thoughts and their wants as fast as possible, and as efficiently as possible, because a lot of times that's whenever we start to see quote unquote behaviors, right? It's really because their communication is not being understood. So either we need to understand their forms of communication, or we need to help them learn other ways to learn these ways to communicate with others. So for initiating communication, they have to have intent to communicate, play, take a turn, or make a request. So this is what I like to tell parents about setting up communication opportunities at home. This goes against that natural parent instinct that I know my child is like, he's out of water in his cup, right? So I'm just going to go get the cup and fill it up. What we want to do is let the cup run out of water so that they have something to communicate about. What we want to do is have them sit down at the table to eat and then forget to turn on the lights. What we want to do is have them sit down to eat and give them a plate with no food and then be like, oh no, we need food. We forgot. We want to set up those communication opportunities that will help give them a reason and be motivated to communicate. So those are some of the ways that we can teach requesting, taking a turn, and initiating communication through play. So joint attention is one of the multimodal communication forms. Gives you something and you say something. So a child brings something up to you and they say it. In this video right here with this 11-month-old that we're going to watch, this was actually, I was trying to get him to imitate my my onomatopoeia or my interjection, which was achoo. This is the achoo game, right? You go, achoo. You can see that he's not quite there yet, but I do want you to watch the way that he is initiating communication by trying to hand me the cone. So sometimes this is what I mean, that you might not hear a child say something, but you can tell that they are trying to communicate with you in another way.
Practice by taking the largest cone from the roll and build cone set and placing it on your head like a hat. Pretend to sneeze as you say, so the cone falls off your head. Your baby will likely laugh, giggle, and want to repeat the game. After the cone falls off your head, you can say, uh-oh, and then repeat.
So he definitely had intent to communicate, but he's not quite there as far as imitating vocal tones there. So what would I do there? I would back up to imitating actions. So I hope that that's helpful if you're watching this and are like, well, what would I do now? So this little one, I would definitely back up to imitating actions with him. Yes, love achoo. I put anything on my head. Anything that goes on my head can be sneezed off. Super fun. Great game, especially for initiating communication, because then I just sit there and hopefully the child either puts it on their head or tries to hand it to me in a way that I know that they're initiating that communication or that social exchange. The last one on the screen is whining or crying with the intention to have a need met. So not just walking around like talking like la la la, but they're talking to you and they need something. So they really are trying to initiate that communication. A lot of times our autistic population, they are trying to initiate communication, but it doesn't look in the way that it does for typical language development. And that's something that we will definitely need to address, and something that we need to help. We need to really get to know every child to make sure that they're regulated and that we're able to get on their page to where we can see what it is in a way that they are able to communicate so we can understand.
Practice.
Oh, I meant to go to the next slide. Okay, so we're here to the imitation hierarchy chart. Imitation hierarchy is a visual reference to help teach parents and caregivers the stage of gross, fine, and oral motor skills in childhood development. So again, we're going to start with those gross motor skills. We're going to come down to fine motor and then finally to oral motor imitation. And this is why a lot of times parents will say, oh, my therapist is just playing with my child. She's not trying to get him to say anything first. But really, I have to make sure that we understand that their body can do what my body can do and that they can imitate these gross and fine motor skills before we move on to verbal imitation. So these are links if you're on the presentation. If not, I have it linked on the handout for you. I love this question, Priya. Make sure to drop it in the Q&A so I have time to answer it in the end and it doesn't get lost. Okay, so for the imitation hierarchy, we start at the bottom. So those are actions with objects. Remember our wooden sound cylinders, we were shaking them. Remember our gestures, we're using 16 by 16 months. And then we're moving into facial expressions. A great way to do this is by acting surprised, like every time. I'm surprised 24/7. right? And then also in the mirror, giving kisses, making funny faces, playing peekaboo in the mirror is a great way to practice those facial expressions. Vocalizations, those are intentional vocalizations. So again, talking about maybe a word approximation like ba for ball. Sound words, which are our onomatopoeias and our interjections, which are often a child's first word, like uh-oh, oh no, wee, yay, boom, watch out, like things like that are action words. And also animal noises are counted as sound words and a child's first word. So a lot of times parents will say, we don't really have any words, but they know all the animal sounds. Guess what? Those are all words. So it's a great place to start. And if I know that the child can do all of these things under here, then I'll start with verbal routines. And a verbal routine is something like ready, set, or 1, 2, right? And then also our functional words. So verbal routines will help your child learn those functional words. So if we're working on ready, set, go, then we can go is a functional word, which makes something happen. So those are words that are important to a child. So if you're like, say basketball, I don't think, like, it's great if they will say it, but they probably won't. But if you're like help or mine or stuck or no or up or go and something happens, those are the words that a child's really going to see and that they're really going to be able to say. And that they're also going to care about saying, right? And then finally, those single words, things that are important to your child, like mama, dad, pet names, car, truck, ball, blanket, whatever is their favorite. And you can also download this on my Teachers Pay Teachers account. The Speech Scoop is the store. Okay, so now that our child has all of these skills, right? We're looking at milestones and averages. This is something that I really like to go over with SLPs because of how quickly these, whenever a language burst happens or that language explosion that we hear parents talk about, the numbers start to multiply so quickly. And if parents are just given a milestone, which is what doctors or pediatricians or the AAP recommends, that's what 90% of children are doing. So we really need to keep that in mind, because whenever I'm giving out averages, I'm giving out the average of what most children are doing at this age. Remember, we're still taking into consideration if a child has gross or fine motor advances or delays in different areas. But we do need to be cognizant that, especially whenever you're getting to 24 months, the milestone that your doctor is going to say is 50 words, but the average is 250. That's a difference of 200 words. If you're a parent and you're hearing, oh, the milestone's 50, and you're thinking, my child says 30, maybe they're like not that far behind. But if you're a parent and you hear most children at this age say 250 words, and you're talking about these are expressive language, receptive language is, we know at 24 months that most children understand 1,000 words. So this is a huge, huge discrepancy between a milestone and an average. And also the references are linked. You can click here to download them as well. They're also on TPT. Okay, also, yes, okay, so we are going in right now, we're going into ASD and pre-verbal skills. So differences, so splinter skills are things where a child might have some of the pre-verbal skills, but they're missing other skills. A lot of times, they're not necessarily missing those other skills, they are presenting very differently. So regulation and rapport, number one thing you're going to do with your autistic clients or your autistic child, right? You're going to make sure that they're regulated. They are not doing anything until they're regulated, just like me, right? If I don't have my coffee in the morning, not doing anything, or I may be in a bad mood. And then rapport, they're also not going to do anything for someone that they don't know, right? And so do you have that one-on-one rapport? Have you, this is like the stage that a lot of therapists tend to skip. Have you really developed that trust with a child that they know you're going to get down there and play with them? What I like to do to test this is look at their body posture. Are they immediately turning away from you? Even their shoulders, are they turning their shoulders away to kind of like move their toy away from you? They don't quite trust you yet. So back up before asking them to do anything. We really need to establish this rapport, especially with these children. So we see differences in environmental stimuli reactions and attention, and that joint attention. For example, one of the first differences that you might see in is heightened response to bath time or water exposure. A lot of autistic babies do not like bath time. It's often known as soothing for typically developing children, or for but for autistic community, a lot of times bath time is overwhelming. The water exposure is difficult to process. It's coming out of surprise. It's coming at your head, right? For neurotypical children, it's not as big as a sensory experience, or it's a more soothing sensory experience. So again, for neurodiverse populations, we might see heightened or reduced response to singing and music. They might love music, but maybe they cover your ears. Maybe they cover their ears whenever you're singing. And it's because the tune is different. The melody is different. It's not the same. And it's a different experience that they're having. And that could be dysregulating. So we really need to focus on regulation and rapport and how they might be experiencing these sensory differences. Joint attention without eye contact. They could be walking around the room and they are listening to you and they know everything that you are saying. So they do not need to be sitting and necessarily playing with you. If they are playing on the floor, I like to, as long as they are comfortable with me in their space, and most of the time they are, because I've developed rapport with them. I've spent session after session getting to know them, what they like, what they don't like, their little like nonverbal cues that I could read so that I don't invade their space or be disrespectful to them in a way that they're trying to communicate. So we really want to focus on regulation, rapport, intrinsic motivation, whatever is motivating to them, which might not be what you had planned for the day. And then helping others understand their modes of communication, and also helping them learn ways to communicate effectively. And the last thing we need to do is determine if they're Justsalt language processor. So let's get into that. All right, Justsalt language processors. I know many of us are familiar. This is also a link right here. It will take you to the meaningful speech stages of Justsalt language processing, which will go into more detail here. I'm not going to go into detail about necessarily this, but I did want to touch base with it. If your child is if your client is Justsalt language processor, that means that they learn language differently than a normal child would learn, as far as the word like ball, go big ball. They might learn go big ball if that is part of a script or a Justsalt, and then they will be able to break them down into smaller pieces. So stage 1, delayed echolalia. And really quickly, I wanted to talk about echolalia in general. Echolalia is typical in speech and language development up to 24 months. At 24 months, we're going to see a peak where a child's receptive and expressive language skills are starting to even out. And then by 27 months, we should really see no more echolalia as a normal response, as far as like, put this on your head. And the child says, put this on your head, instead of putting it on their head. That tells me that they're not understanding that language, because they're still demonstrating echolalia. But if they are a GLP, then they could just be in stage 1, which is delayed echolalia. An example of this, Justsalt or scripts, I have a child who says wet whenever he's mad or upset. So if he doesn't like something, he says wet, wet, wet. But if you don't know that, then how would you know that he means I'm upset, I don't like it, no thank you? And then I really liked this one. This is from someone that I follow on Instagram. She shared that her child kept coming up to her and saying, I like eggs and toast. And this is from Splash and Boots, which is right here. And you can see that you might be able to guess what he was actually trying to say. Sometimes the Justsalt or the scripts are not, the words are not meaning what it is that they are trying to express. And that's why it's so important to write down all of their scripts that they have and really try to figure out what show did this come from? What movie did this come from? Did mom say this one time? To try to get into the emotion of that child might have been feeling. So here, every time the child said, I like eggs and toast, the next line of that song is, but I love you the most. And I absolutely love that because he was trying to say, I love you, mom, right? So we have stage 1, delayed echolalia, typical in speech and language development up until 24 months, starts to decrease. If we're still seeing it after 27 months, the child could be Justsalt language processor, and that's where we're going to move into stage 2, which is partial Justsalt or mitigated scripts. And then we'll move into stage 3, single words and 2-word combinations, and stages 4 through 6 are beginning original phrases. So really, this is one of the most important pieces. Obviously, this webinar is about pre-linguistic skills. It's not about Justsalt language processors, but if you would like more information, you can definitely look up the NLA approach, and that way you can have more information on this. Okay, let's see. Okay, so some key takeaways here are pre-verbal skills to determine where to start. So we're not going to start with the child's age. Really, age doesn't really matter. A lot of times I'm working on these pre-verbal skills if a child truly doesn't have them, like you saw in the video, whenever they're 5, because they're important. And are we building other skills into those? Yes. But am I still targeting those pre-verbal skills? Yes. I'm always looking at the imitation hierarchy. What can they do? What can they do assisted, and what can they do by themselves? So that is a great PDF to give out to parents. And then also, are they initiating communication? If they're not, but maybe parent isn't setting up communication opportunities that we went over, allowing them to make a choice between 2 things. And here's another key tip, offering non-preferred items, like something like, do you want cookie or tomato? Something like that. If we're always just offering 2 choices that a child likes, it doesn't really matter to them whichever one they get, right? They like either one. So sometimes I'll just throw the non-preferred one in there as the last one and see, are they just imitating or having that delayed echolalia back to me, or even immediate echolalia back to me that they want tomato. I give them tomato, tomato, I give them tomato. It's not until they're like, why does this lady keep giving me tomatoes, that they're like, what am I saying? Oh, I said tomato. I'm like, oh, did you mean cookie? Here's your cookie. We say it over and over again like that. So we always want to be play-based, even if you're working on certain skills, even if you're doing repetition. We want to join the child, let them lead, join them. If you don't know where to start, lay down next to the child, have them be comfortable in your space. If they are turning their back, maybe back off a little, play some music, do something that you know that mom said that they enjoy, some bubbles. And then if they're letting you join their space, just copy them. Don't take their things, but copy them with something else that you have. Okay, and then using the NLA approach if your child is GLP. So, okay, I see a bunch of you are having issues on the website, so don't worry, these are available on TPT as well. On the last slide that says connect with me, there's a TPT link, and you can download all of these same things on Teachers Pay Teachers under the Speech Scoop store. Okay, and if not, I'll get it fixed right after we get off this webinar. So thank you guys for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to take some questions. This is our Connect page. If you are looking to connect with me, here is Instagram. If you click on it, it's going to take you to these things. My main platform is YouTube. I have 105 YouTube videos that you can share with parents that are about all of these topics. There is one specifically that is on pre-linguistic skills that you can pull up. And then we are going to go over questions. One question that I saw come up was, when is a good age to recommend AAC? So AAC, if you have a child who has met all the pre-verbal skills, no matter of their age, that is a good time to start AAC. And you don't have to jump necessarily to you could stick with like a light tech if they're not quite ready for like another higher tech option. You could just stick with a core board, or stick with a core board with a French board. I do have one on my CPT and also on the website if it'll let you download it. That is a great place to start. If a child, there is no minimum age. So if a child already has those pre-linguistic skills and they're just not moving up that imitation hierarchy, but they are able to do everything with their hands and also gross and fine motor, then they are ready. And I would definitely introduce AAC. There is no information, there is no reference that is going to say that AAC will hinder speech and language communication. It really doesn't. I thank you guys for all the positive comments. Okay. Do we have any suggestions on developing a longer attention span with neurodiverse population? Okay, yes. So really, I like to go with, again, movement and sensory regulation. So I'm working on things while I'm pushing them in the swing. I'm working on things while I'm moving them around, if that's what they like to do. If they like to line up objects, I'm working on things. I give them the object. I say, like, oh, here's the cow. Cow says moo, and then I hand it to him, and then it goes in the line, and it can stay in the line until it's ready to come out of the line. I try to use whatever it is that they like and really just drag out a couple of seconds anytime I can get a couple of seconds. That is how I work on it, just 5 seconds at a time, 5 seconds at a time. And you would also be surprised that if you have rapport, if you have established rapport with a child and they're regulated, you could get a lot more joint attention out that they'll be demonstrating. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. I see many of my students with difficulty with give me object when they can do other one-step, high five, wave, goodbye. Okay. Yes, so sometimes this one's tricky because sometimes it could be because they just don't want to. That's like on the PLS, right? Where there's like a spoon, a duck, and something else fun, a ball, and you say, give me the spoon. Like, they're always going to grab the duck. They're always going to grab the ball. So a lot of times that's what we see are teaching basic vocabulary. Instead of give me, let's try like point to or show me or where's. You could always say, where's duck? And I like to be silly. I might say, where's duck? Is this? No, that's not duck. Duck says, quack, quack. Is this duck? And again, we're really just staying really high affect, especially for our neurodiverse populations. I'm being really high affect, but maybe not as loud, but my facial expression is enough to keep a lot of attention. And that is one way that you could work on following one-step directions. And again, instead of saying like clean up, just look at the wording, really just changing 1 or 2 things for wording. Instead of saying, let's clean up, say, let's play boom. Ready? Boom, your turn. And let's see how many we can put in a minute. I'm going to put my timer on. Or if a child's small, I might say 15 seconds. Let's get everything in. So they are still following that direction, that one step, but they're not necessarily having to give you or do something that they don't want to, right? Okay. Is there a good parent handout? Yes, on my website, which I'm going to go take a look at right after this. There is 3 steps, my favorite 3 tips for talking. It's a great parent handout. It talks about vowels, pulling objects next to your face, and repeating. So make sure to grab that. That's under resources at thespeechscoop.com. Are you teaching sign language if the child is already delayed? And also, what age do you start? Yes, I'm always teaching sign language, always, because that's going to be one of the quickest ways that they can imitate, right? And that also shows that they understand that this sign means a word. So for example, if I'm singing like, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on this farm he had a, and I'm holding up a cat, I would love to see if any child would just even do this, right? It doesn't have to be a perfect cat sign, but something like that. We're always pairing words with signs. That is a great place to start. You could start. I've been doing signs with Will since he was 3 months old. And you could see in one of my reels, I had a debate, like, did he sign dog whenever I'm singing? So you'll have to check out that reel and let me know what you think. But a lot of people think that he did try to do an approximation sign for dog. Okay. Okay, I never thought some of the gestures mentioned in the first exercise gestures, such as blowing or stomping. I can see how stomping could be a gesture if a child is stomping because they're upset. Could you explain how blowing could be a gesture? Okay, yes, I've always thought of gestures of movements primarily done with your hands. Yes, so gestures are your body communicating, right? So sometimes, like, if we are working on oral motor imitation of a gesture, such as like blowing the candles out for your birthday, I could see how that might be a little bit confusing, but really anything your whole body is doing can be a gesture. So like, even though this isn't necessarily meaning anything, maybe it means I'm being silly. So that's one way. How much repetition is generally needed for babies to learn a tactic? Thinking times numbers of day. A tactic. Okay, so I'm not understanding this question. Hopefully this one can be reworded. So maybe to learn a skill, how much repetition? Okay, so I'll answer it like this. How much repetition is needed for a child to learn a word? We know that typically developing children need upwards of 100 times to pair a word. This is why whenever we see a ball, we don't, or a bird, let's say, we don't want to say like, look, a bird, there it is, it's flying. Okay, look how big it is. Wow. We want to say, look, bird, hi, bird, waving to bird. Bird is blue, fly away, bird. Now I said the word bird 5 times. It really does take like a cognizant thought to remember to say a word that many times. But it is important because a lot of times we don't say those words so many times, and that's why a child needs so much repetition to pair a word with a meaning. So I hope that answered your questions. What can we do if a game is super fun and the child's not interested? Great question. Okay, so I agree. The problem is it's not super fun to them, or maybe they don't understand the game. So whatever it is that they want to do, we just have to join it and then try to make that as fun as possible. I do understand that I've like set up so many fun things, and then, you know, in the end, they don't want to do it. They just want to do the same thing that we always do, or something that might seem boring or routine, but really just try to build as much language and have as much fun as you can. If you're still hanging on, thank you guys for coming. I'm so glad. I'm just reading. Yes, no questions, you can log off. So I'm just answering. Make sure to take the assessment. I hope you guys all get hundreds. I'm sure you will. Okay, yes, PDFs of the slides. I can chat with Jim about that. Okay, a kiddo I've been working with. Oh, perfect. Okay, a kiddo I've been working with for the last month rarely makes any vocalizations and does not imitate any sounds or words. However, mom reports he has at least 5 words. Should I work on vocalizations first with him? So I would back up to imitating actions. So use that hierarchy chart. So I know mom's saying that he has 5 words, and those might be words that maybe mom understands, right? And things do count as words, even if they don't sound like it. Like if I'm saying Betha for breakfast, that counts as long as it's said the same way every single time. But if I'm saying Betha or something similar for cookie, that's not the same thing. So that's really important to explain to mom, is that it counts as a word as long as it, even if it's said incorrectly, as long as it's said in the same way every single time. So definitely say that, and then really just look at that imitation hierarchy chart. Start at the bottom. If he's not doing vocalizations, move back down. Shaking, shake, shake, shake. Is he understanding what I want him to say and do? And then I would move to signs. That's what I would do for that one. Hope that was helpful. Okay, during the milestone slide, did you say that the average vocabulary development is receptive? So the averages that are on the milestone slide are expressive language. So I was going over the expressive language. The receptive language are different. You can find those on ASHA at asha.org. Most of the cases are GLP, a lot of them, okay, do not have. Yes, do you recommend on focusing? Okay, this is a great question. Most of my cases are Justsalt language processors, and a lot of them do not have pre-verbal or imitation skills. Do you recommend focusing on those first with them as well? Right now I'm focusing on modeling different types of Justsalt with them verbally and using AAC in play. No, okay, I would, whenever you're working on modeling different types of Justsalt with them verbally and using AAC in play, if you're using Justsalt on your AAC and you're joining them, you actually are targeting those pre-verbal and imitation skills within that. So you're not necessarily saying like shake, 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 right? But you're touching the AAC and they're touching it. So they are actually imitating you a lot. So I think stick with what you're doing, modeling different types of Justsalt, but again, you're doing them in play, and maybe try to do some of those imitation skills within play. And then you could model AAC, both, you could do a light tech, and a more advanced tech one. So yes, so you want to work them in, but still stick with what you're doing. Okay, let's see. Would you suggest using the command look at me for working on eye contact? And would you consider joint attention a higher skill than eye contact and thus knows need to work on? I wouldn't. Again, if we're talking about neurodiverse population or anyone that's uncomfortable with eye contact, I would not say, look at me. I wouldn't give them a direct, look at me, look at me. A lot of times what I'll do instead is, children are very object focused. So if I have something fun, right? Like if I'm like, oh, a fox. A lot of times kids are doing this, right? They're not looking at you because they're looking at the fox. So instead I'll just pull the fox right next to my face and I'll say, fox. and then they're naturally looking at me. So that's how I would do it instead of giving them a direct cue, because really you're just asking them to like obey a command in that, and they're not actually joining you. So yes, I do consider eye contact a lesser skill than joint attention, but remember, joint attention might look differently. So my main advice is to pull something next to your face to allow them to look at your face naturally. Okay. How do you tackle no babbling at 12 months? Am I over time?
Hi, sorry, I got kicked out and then it just brought me back in.
Okay. How do you tackle no babbling at 12 months? This is going to be the last question that I answer. I believe that the certificate gets emailed. Yes. Okay, the videos are, again, they can be seen on the presentation on the Canva link, or at the bottom of your handout where it says link presentation, or on the Love Every app, and you click on the play thing. So whatever skill, check out those months, like 6 or 7, scroll down to the play thing that you saw listed, like the wooden sound cylinders, and you can click on that and see that same video again. How do you tackle no babbling at 12 months? Okay, 12 months no babbling would be, I would go back down. Are they understanding? Are they following directions? Are they having joint attention? And are they doing all of the other pre-linguistic skills? So instead of offering the babbling, I would do just more of focusing on vocalization. So back and forth, you're singing a song, you pause, right? I clap and I clap and I stop. I clap and I clap and I stop. I clap, I clap, I clap, I clap, I clap, I clap, and see if they say anything or notice that something's happening. That's what I'm looking for there. And then if they say, bah, then I'm like, yes, ready, go. And I provide a sign and I pair it with a word. So really, I would just start at the bottom of the imitation hierarchy. Okay, I think that check out, if you're looking for the assessment, check out the chat. I believe that the host shared it there. Okay, guys. So I answered all the questions. Thank you all for being here. And I hope to see you again next time. And thanks for joining us with Able U. And
Yes.
the assessment is in the chat.
I was going to say thank you, Kelly. And when this webinar ends, you'll be redirected to a page that has the link to the assessment as well. So if you don't get in the chat, we're about to end this webinar and then you will get the assessment there. So thank you again, Kelly, and we hope you join us for another Able U session again soon.
Okay, everybody. Thanks. See you soon.